There's always a challenge. And if any of you out there think, oh, life is so perfect. At one point, when I get rid of this, I'm gonna be perfectly happy, meaning everything's gonna go great. It's not gonna happen. You're gonna have challenges all the way through your life. And the key is, how do you stay happy through those challenges?
I'm Mark Cook, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. After turnarounds as chief executive, the largest ever studies of award-winning leaders, a New York Times bestseller, and 5-star keynotes, I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Now, lead with Bold Encounters today.
Welcome to Bold Encounters. I'm so excited to have with me Kent Bowman today. He spent 40 years and he has been accounting and doing consulting and advising companies for several of the most notable companies we've all heard of. But he's also built a big regional firm with his partners. And he has now reached that enviable point where he's retired from that career and started a whole new career instead of resting, which we're going to talk about. He's currently with City Strong. It's a 501c3 philanthropy and service organization. I'm going to let him explain that at the end thoroughly. But I am fascinated with you. How are you? You're so nice to do this.
I'm doing good, Mark, and it's great to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
You bet. To document your career is truly an honor for me because I know you. Recently, I got an itch to interview some of the people that live around me that I know personally are extraordinary, and you're one of them. And it's a short list. And I have been very excited to hear how someone starts a career, builds a career, and ends with financial success, but more importantly with client success and partner success and firm success. And you've really hit on all cylinders at the end. And so how does one navigate such an amazing career? And I'm excited to hear the details. So I want to start back at the beginning, and we're going to hear some difficulties, but in the beginning, you graduated in accounting, had all the awards, top academic, and you got a pretty good job. But anyone who's going into a new job faces challenges. Tell me about the early part of your career, that first real professional job.
Happy to. First, I got to say, we're sitting here at the University of Utah today in the Spencer Fox Eccles Business Building. And this building wasn't here when I was at the U, but this area up here meant a lot. That's where I got my training. That's where I became, I'll say, competent in a skill set that people needed and wanted. And so graduating here, getting my master's degree in public accounting, if you will, and it's really not public accounting, it's professional accounting, but then going into the public accounting arena was something I had thought about for a long time. I wanted to do. Wasn't an easy path. As you said, this is an academic path that can take a lot of effort. But I loved it and I wanted to do it. And so as I got that degree here at the University of Utah, I had the opportunity to look at several of what was then the big 8 accounting firms. And I opted, after a lot of thought, to go with the firm Arthur Andersen, located here in Salt Lake City.
Big, huge company, pretty small town.
Small town, big firm. Arthur Andersen at that time had a reputation of being the very best of the accounting profession. And that was something I desired. I wanted to go and learn from the best. I think if you set your sights high, even if you don't hit that ultimate goal, you'll hit closer to it than if you set your sights low. So that was an important thing I learned, was I wanted to be with the best if I could. And I fortunately got that opportunity and started working way back in 1980 here in the Salt Lake City office of Arthur Andersen.
Yeah, sounds like you were looking for realization without knowing it of that rule of you're going to end up the average of the 5 people you're with. And so if you're rubbing shoulders all day long and going into companies with people that have passed through the academics required and the interview process required for a big household name like that, that you're going to get better just because of that.
Absolutely. And the people that surrounded me, of course, at that firm were excellent in what they did. Not only in the technical aspects of accounting and auditing and tax, but they were also excellent in how they dealt with people, how they built relationships, how they understood how to make somebody else successful would ultimately come back to help you be successful.
Yeah. I want to ask you an interesting question, because I had one gentleman that I interviewed. I didn't record him, but he said, well, the way you want to be successful in leadership is you want to go to Harvard and then you want to work at McKinsey. And it was hard to hear that because not all of us can actually get into Harvard and get a job at McKinsey. And so the interesting question is this: if they didn't say, wow, way to go on your undergraduate and your master's and you're near the top of your class, if you had to find a household name or a company that had those kind of shoulders to rub, how low, what would you have accepted? How determined would have you been to work at one of those big firms rather than just go work with 3 other people at some small teeny firm?
Well, here's an interesting thing that I've learned over time, and that is, if you don't get the initial opportunity that you wanted, if you get as close to it as you can, it might be way down the rung, but you get as close to it as you can, and then you work hard, you do your part, people will notice. And it's just kind of like if you do a sports analogy, say, an NFL team, they kind of still look around, and it's amazing how many people they grab that aren't drafted because they've heard they've got some skills, and they bring them in and they take a look at them, and then they put them on the team, right? Yeah. And I think for those that don't get that initial opportunity to go right where you want, you go as close as you can, and then deliver, and people will notice. And somebody will know you and say, hey, if we could get that gal or that guy to come over here to this firm, it would be a win. And you'll make your way there. I'm confident that happens very, very often.
Yeah, great point. It brings a memory that's maybe in line. We happened to be at the University of Utah, as you said. I didn't plan on this. You arranged it. I happened to go here too. And I had a rough childhood in my high school. My father passed away. Listeners have heard this story. There's places to go listen to that story. But the net of it was, as I wasn't a 4.0 college student. I wasn't at the top of my class. Had to kind of redo high school the first year and a half, 2 years, and then finish college. And did pretty well. Was strong enough to do some good things. But I ended my college career right in the middle of a recession. So as I applied to all of these grad schools, I wanted to go to business school and get an MBA and a good one and not one off the shelf. And so I would just apply to a million places, and they just kept coming back. No, 5 years experience, please. 5 years experience, please. And not high enough scores, not high enough grades. And so then I got the letter from the University of Utah, my last hope. And they said no. So I went in. I knew one of the professors because I went undergraduate here, and I thought, I'm going to ask him what I need to do. And I asked him, and he was on the admissions committee. I think he was the chair. And he literally said, you will never get into MBA school. You will not be able to attend here. We just have higher standards than your grades at 3.6 and higher test scores at whatever it was, and you will not go here. So I visited him 3 times, I think maybe more, and finally got the letter that said yes. I think it's only the fact that I just kept trying to meet with them and meet with them and meet with them. He was really sick of meeting with me, talking about the same subject, having me insist there was something. So I appreciate that answer. Okay, so you get into the big firm. That's scary. What did you look forward to, and what plan did you have for moving ahead and being successful other than seriously hard work?
It's a great question. Interestingly, when I graduated from the University of Utah, my emphasis was in taxation. So when I was going to begin at Arthur Andersen, I was hired into the tax department. But I talked to people and I said, it's interesting, but I really would rather be an auditor because I can go out and I can meet with people. And they said, well, go ask them to be an auditor. And I said, but I wasn't hired for that. And they said, that's okay, do it anyway. And so I did. And then I received a great answer. They said, that's fine. And I said, but can I ask one more thing? I'd like to be in the tax practice for the tax busy season, because I had thought if I could get really, really good at tax the way that that firm operated, I could use those skills from tax to be able to do the accounting, the financial statement aspects of taxation better than anybody else. Because the ones that were going into audit, they didn't take any tax, right? Yeah. So it allowed me, and I learned again this early, that if you can build a skill set that's just a little bit better than those around you, you will be noticed. So I was the only, when I went into the audit practice, I was the only auditor that could do what we call a tax accrual. And I continued to do that. So everybody in the audit practice would come to me and say, Kent, help me with the tax accrual on this, because I don't want to go to the tax department to do it. I just want to do it. So I became known for that. Now, I wasn't any smarter than anybody else in that group, but I had this skill set that set me apart. And so in answer to that, if you can develop a skill set and work just 15% harder than the guy next to you, you will receive acknowledgement that will allow you to move through your career that much faster and that much better.
Yeah, I love that. What it reminds me of is one of the things that we found as we were researching leaders is we found a split as they were trying to fulfill the needs of clients and their customers that I never even considered. And that was, we as human beings have a discovery need. We have a need to adventure and learn. And that learn is like open-ended. You go on a trip to Europe, you're going to learn something. You go through something difficult, you're going to learn something. You're going to learn in life nonstop if you're trying to. Yeah. If you're trying to live a good life. Mostly through hardship and adventure and some books. But there's a difference between learning and mastery. Mastery is creating a capability. Mastery is creating a capability that allows you to do something for other people that they really need. And you have all the pieces and skills necessary to accomplish the whole thing, not just part of it that you learned somewhere in a class or by some person. So you had this mastery and you developed this skill. And what else helped you be successful there? Is there something else in that first job that was key?
The other thing I think that I learned that played well for me for the rest of my business career, and that was you always show up, you always accept a request to do whatever they ask you to do. Now, you might have a lot of trepidation. You might say, I'm really not ready for that. But if you will accept it, they're going to be willing to help you through it, right? So I always said to myself, whatever I'm asked at my firm to do, to move that opportunity, that client opportunity forward, I'm gonna do it. Even if I have to stay an extra 3 hours. And in those days, I don't know what it's like in all the firms now, but in those days, you weren't paid for any overtime, right? if you worked 8 hours a day or you worked 16 hours a day, you got the same pay.
Yeah.
But I concluded early that if someone asked me to stay and do something for an extra 3 hours that would help that client relationship move forward and help the firms succeed, and especially that person above me to succeed, I was going to do it. Because if I could impress the client, and especially if I could impress the person that I was reporting to, they would remember that. And it would allow me to have the best opportunity to become the best I could be.
Yeah. Great point. I hear that a lot. I'm not sure I did that as much as I should have in my career. I was very focused on a mastery, but I love that idea of raising your hand first, eager to do, and then do what you've described. Work hard with a mastery and a special skill set. Really terrific.
If I could, Mark, said kind of a slightly different way. People would ask me later in my career, what's the most important attribute you look for when you're hiring somebody? And I would always answer, and I still believe it, is I look for the people that demonstrate that they take ownership in the issue. So if they're acting like they owned Arthur Andersen right from the beginning, if everything they're doing is like, I'm an owner here, this is mine, I want this to be successful, I know they're going to be a tremendous asset, and they're the ones I'm going to go all out to come and join that firm or that company or whatever it is.
Yeah. You know, I've only learned in the last 5 years something that would help me and other people like me. They're hesitant to do what you just said. Like when I started my career, I wanted to be me. I wanted to be different in a very individualistic way, and I was hesitant to be part of us and the brand. And it's interesting. I think the young people that at least hear the idea that the most important differentiator that human beings have on the planet are to cooperate, to flexibly cooperate. You are never going to do something amazing and great alone. So it's nice the earlier in your career that you can get over that idea that it's me and I will be the all-star and be the expert at cooperation. It gives you a mentality that, you know, maybe I could say I'm part of Arthur Andersen. Maybe I could say I'm part of firm ABC, because it's us, it's we that are attacking this client issue, not me, the all-star.
Yeah. And you'll learn too, I think, in life that you're always better when you listen to those around you, because everybody has a talent that's a little bit different than everybody else. And you might be the very best at the technical accounting, in this example we're talking here. That guy might be the very best at knowing how to read the room, knowing how to understand what the client really wants. And the other guy might be the very best at knowing how to cause the rest of the group to work as a team. And so you take the best of that skill, the best of that skill, the best of your skill, and you have a product that's superior to any one of the three. And that's the way we always operated our firm at Arthur Andersen, later when I was at KPMG, and ultimately when we created a new approach at Tanner, a local firm, we followed that to the T, and it always paid off.
Almost an aggressive cooperation.
Yes.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
Now, we've said some really positive things. It sounds like you've had an easy life at this point, but I know you personally, and I know that you have 1 to 3 really big challenges. And one of the themes that I like to cover is people that hit these obstacles, because any path, any 5-year plan, whatever it is, hits a point where they have to pivot. And so you're at that stage of your career. What's the first big challenge that's happened to you there?
Well, I'll tell you, it was an interesting time. I was in the accounting profession, there was a level called senior. And that senior level you would hit typically at 2 years into the firm, and you would stay there probably until your 4th year or 5th year. Then you would become what we would call a manager. So I'm a senior. The senior carries a huge load, in an audit of a publicly traded company or a company wanting to become publicly traded. They are on site, they're living that company's life, if you will, collecting all the data, making sure everything's accurate and cannot be second guessed, because all that data is going to be given to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and if it's wrong, you're done, okay? So very, very important stuff. So I'm the senior, I'm responsible for all this on the initial public offering of SkyWest Airlines. Many of your viewers may know who they are. And at the time that SkyWest had decided to go public, meaning sell its stock on the public exchange, there was another entity in Borrego Springs, California, near Palm Springs, called Sun Air. And so to make this process even more difficult, SkyWest decides to buy Sun Air, and then we have to audit both those companies for 3 years, going back 3 years, and then put them together with pro formas to then present to the Securities and Exchange Commission to sell the stock. This took 8 or 9 months of effort of a pretty large team from Arthur Andersen. I'm in the middle of that, okay? I'm back home for the weekend. I'm out in my yard mowing the lawn. I have 3 little kids. I have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old at the time. And my youngest one, Heather, along with her older brother and sister, Jeff and Natalie, decided they were going to exit our backyard and walk to a nearby 7-Eleven. As they did that, along that path to the 7-Eleven, there was a canal, an open canal. And that canal was running water very, very high and fast. The oldest of the 3 said, we better go back because Dad's going to be mad if we don't get back home. And the youngest of the 3, Heather, was fascinated by the water and went over and tried to touch it and fell in. Mm. She was swept into a culvert that went underneath a long driveway. Mm. I obviously didn't know any of this was happening. And then my little 4-year-old comes running back and is screaming at me, Daddy, Daddy, we're never going to see Heather again. Mm. Devastation. Our lives changed. I won't go into all the detail, but 30 minutes later, after trying to find where she fell in and trying to locate her, we did successfully locate her. And she'd been trapped under that culvert underwater for over 30 minutes. Mm. She was dead. She was gone. Mm. Now, miraculously, and again, I won't go into all that detail, but miraculously, she survived. Mm. And we were able to get her up to the primary children's hospital, and she spent 3 weeks in ICU trying to recover.
Since this is an amazing story, I'll create a link in the show notes to one of the places that you've been interviewed fully about this. But tell us that specific part about the gentleman and you and going into what you call a culvert, which I think is a cover to the canal, right? Like a bigger version of the driveway cover. Is that right?
Really, the culvert is the actual pipe, that goes
itself
underneath the driveway. Mm-hmm. And so she's inside, there's no cover over it. The water just sucked her into this culvert. And we didn't know where she was. She could have gone all the way through the culvert under the street, and we never would have found her. Mm. But she was hung up just inside the culvert, maybe about 4 feet in. And that's where she was trapped.
The water rushing in.
The water rushing in. So again, we don't have the time to go through all the details. And quite frankly, I will tell your viewers, there were true miracles that took place here that if you knew the whole story, it's mind-blowing to me. Yeah, but a gentleman came to help me. We were able to, with the help of his son, the only one there that would be big enough to crawl into the water and small enough to get through the culvert. My shoulders were too wide. Everybody else's were too wide. He was able to pull her out. We got her eventually revived, but again, for another 5 minutes, the paramedics just said, we have no response, there's nothing here. But miraculously, we got her revived. Then 3 weeks in ICU at Primary Children's. And then at the end of that 3 weeks, we were told, you get what you see. And Heather, unfortunately, at that point, the only response she had was she could make a moaning sound and she could bite her lower lip. She was cortically blind. She had no movement of any extremity, no finger, no leg, no toe. She couldn't talk. She was essentially, there was really nothing there. And we were told at that point that we should put her into an institution because there would be nothing we could do. And if we didn't put her directly into the institution, then our insurance would not cover anything and we would be left with an unmanageable situation. Deborah, my wife, and I, we concluded, no, that wasn't going to happen. We were going to bring her home, and we did. Now, the reason I brought up that story, and just to fast forward for your viewers, she recovered to some degree, miraculously. She sees today, she's funny, she laughs, she can talk, she can do many things. She can't walk. She operates more at a 7-year-old development level, but a sweet, sweet girl that is so important to our family. But the reason I bring this up for your viewers is, here I am now. I'm in the middle of this crisis at SkyWest Airlines. There's a lot of money at stake, right? These public offerings are huge dollars, those of you that know. This company...
For a lot of people.
For a lot of people, yeah. And this company is dependent, and I'm the one with all of the knowledge of the company. I've been working on this, right? It's not easy to plug and play somebody different into that situation. So here my poor wife is. We brought her home. We're beginning the rehabilitation process, and I have to make this decision. Do I just walk away from my team and everyone surrounding this on the company side and the legal side, et cetera? Or do I find a way to be supportive and get back as often as I can and at personal cost just fly back even every other day to be a few hours with Heather and make sure she knows I'm there? Most difficult thing I ever did in my life. I was already probably using every brain cell I had just to try to get this thing right for the company. And now I'm trying to, at the same time, deal with this tragedy and make sure my family knows how much I love them.
Yeah,
That was hard.
I happen to know Heather, and it is remarkable that she can communicate with me at all and smile at me, and she's remarkable. And yet, I also noticed that she still has quite a bit of pain occasionally, quite often actually, right? She has this amazing life in between that you guys have given her, and then she also has her own very strong continued challenges, which create more ripples for you guys too, all three of you, and the family. But I'm also amazed by your wife, like the attitude and the matter-of-fact practicality of we're gonna help her and just how she takes it on. Tell me a little bit about Deborah, how she behaves the way she does. I don't know how I could do that, like act the way she does and attack the way she does.
She's miraculous herself. She's really tremendous. Here's a person that, when you look at Heather, she's fun to be around, but then you have to look at the other side of that. She needs 24/7 care. Okay, she can't walk. She can feed herself, but she can't cook any food. So you have to have someone there to feed, to provide the meal and to help make sure she doesn't choke. And then you have all of the issues with showering and going to the bathroom and everything else
Cramps.
that requires someone with her 24/7. And and we're young at the time this was happening. We're young. We didn't have an ability to hire people to help us. We had to do this all by ourselves. And when I say we, I mean Deborah, right? She was the one that was shouldering this while I'm off trying to make a living. So I will say this, that Deborah is remarkable. Heather is remarkable. And I think what helped Deborah and Heather and me and our other children get through this is by, again, looking at the bigger picture. What can we do as individuals to recognize that we're going to have pain? We're going to have very rough times in our life. Are we going to let those derail us? Or are we going to say, all right, here's my next challenge, but I've got a lot of people around me that can help me. And in our case, we have a strong faith that we're going to be supported by God, by Jesus Christ, to help us get through this. And I think that's what's helped us. And I look at times in our lives, even today, Heather will have some pain. She's had to have a hip replaced because of the way she tries to move around. That pain recurs and she suffers. But then we figure out a way to help that. And all of a sudden she's the happiest kid in the world again. And we'll go for 3 weeks before something else happens. There's always a challenge. And if any of you out there think, oh, life is so perfect. At one point, when I get rid of this, I'm going to be perfectly happy, meaning everything's going to go great. It's not going to happen. You're going to have challenges all the way through your life. And the key is, how do you stay happy through those challenges?
It sounds like an echo of what you tried to do early on the job. You raised your hand quickly. You willingly accepted the challenging, painful adventure. And you guys both attacked the situation. All three of you attacked the situation.
That's true. And again, I do not want any of your viewers to think, oh, so because they did this, they have had this perfect life, right? That they never get depressed or down, or they never get mad at each other, or it's just idyllic. No, we still have days when we're frustrated to no end, and we're sad, and we struggle. But we know it's temporary.
Yeah.
And then we rise above that again, and we try to be, the better Kent Bowman, the better Deborah Bowman, and we can get there. Yeah. So it's a journey, and we have to enjoy that journey.
So you're in the middle of this big accounting, huge. It's hard to call it a project. This huge accounting situation with multiple companies, and you can't get people, unlisted or fail, or you've got to pull it off. And what are those conversations like between you and Deborah at that moment? Those are tricky conversations.
They're tricky in a way, but here again, I will say, when you have someone like Deborah, and I would say, Deborah, let me lay this out. You help me here. If I walk away from this, okay, this company's going to suffer, and the firm I'm with is going to suffer. And they're going to let me walk away. None of them are going to force me to be there. They know what I'm going through. But it's going to take much longer to get it done, much more expensive to get it done, and it may even pass the time frame where it's going to make sense.
It may hurt Heather too a little bit, right? Because of the financial
exactly.
Part.
It could
insurance
be that,
and finance.
Exactly. I may have to go find another job, or I may have to do something different, right? So we talk in detail. And this was the way Deborah would respond. And I just hope for all the males out there, this is how your wives would respond, and vice versa, of course. But she said, Kent, I trust you. If you think you need to be there for the overall good of our family, that's where you should be.
Yeah.
And it made it so easy for me to say, all right, I can go do this. I know she's supporting me, and I've got to obviously minimize what I can there and be home as often as I can, so that she doesn't think I've left her to deal with this difficult situation all by herself. So she trusted me, and I trusted her, and we found a way to make it work through that period of time until that absolute crisis was done. And then our lives kind of continued that way throughout. We trusted each other to make sure we were balanced as a family to make things happen.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful how, this is my observation, it could be a little off, but I think it's beautiful how you, as quickly as you could in your life, started to support her. And she's out in the community doing 5 things I see. She's out there making a difference to people besides Heather every 10 minutes, which is so much of both of your time.
Absolutely.
So I think it's amazing how you're a team.
She has gone on to be a disability advocate.
Yeah.
Worked with the state of Utah, with the government committees on the Capitol Hill. She has worked with this family-to-family system within the state of Utah. Yeah. She's traveled around to help people. She's remarkable in her own way in dealing with big issues. And so she's proven she can handle the minutia, and she can handle the big projects equally well.
Yeah. And a relief leader in relief organizations, she's just so practical and down to earth and just moves ahead and nothing phases her. Really great story. So tell us how you pulled it off professionally with this situation.
Well, obviously that IPO went great. SkyWest is a publicly traded entity. They're doing very, very well. They're the largest carrier of their type in the country, and life is good. With Arthur Andersen, I went on there to become a partner, and I became the managing partner of the office. It was a great opportunity for me.
Always in Salt Lake.
Always in Salt Lake City, which is difficult to do with a large firm. You know, many times you have to move to another community to have that opportunity. But I was fortunate that I could do that right here. Then my luck changed again, if you will. Come approximately 2001, Arthur Andersen had a small issue arise that many of your viewers might know, a company called Enron. And when the Enron situation happened, Arthur Andersen essentially ceased to exist. I was the managing partner, and I was responsible for the lives of 120 professionals here in the Salt Lake City office.
Let me ask you, so their headquarters was in Houston. True?
Well, the headquarters are in Chicago, but where the Enron situation happened was in Houston.
Was in Houston. So you're in this little city, you've got a small group of professionals, a huge company, and you have some seriously big mistakes and challenges going on in Houston you're not really privy to, and so what?
Yeah. So essentially, we were left with the option of either just letting Arthur Andersen just shut down and everybody go out and fend for themselves, or we could be proactive and we could go out and talk to our competitors, so the other big 5 firms at the time. You might recognize some names if I tick them off. So Price Waterhouse Coopers, Deloitte and Touche, Ernst & Young, and KPMG were the other 4 international large firms. Mm-hmm. So I made the decision that we would take on this opportunity to go out and negotiate with the other 4 large firms that were located here in Salt Lake. Now, we had 120 people. The next largest at the time was about 70. And so I talked with all of the managing partners of the 4. They're all good people and all very, very good firms. But only one of those firms, as I talked to, could I convince to take everybody, okay? So they would take all the partners, all the managers, all the seniors, all the administrative people, all the secretaries, and take our lease, our open-ended lease. And we had the opportunity as a firm. We could have done better by going with a different one of the big 5, but they would have only taken the partners. And we would have left,
not the lease.
And not the lease. Or they would have only taken half of the managers or a portion of the administrative staff. And it was one of those moments in my life, and those few that they would pay better than if they took everybody, right? So it was one of those moments in my life where I had to say, all right, are you going to practice what you preach here? Are you going to look out for the whole team, make sure everybody's safe, or are you going to do better by picking a solution that will give a few of us a much better situation? And I obviously thought about that, but my background and what I had learned in growing up in the business gave me a very quick answer. We take care of everybody. So we picked KPMG because they stepped up and said they would take everybody. And the beauty of it was they would guarantee for 18 months that everybody that came over would remain at what their current take home, their current compensation was, so they could all get their feet on the ground, and then they could make separate decisions later if they wanted to stay or go. Again, another really critical crisis where this firm that I believed in, that I had built my career around, that I had given my blood, sweat, and tears to, right? All of a sudden disappeared.
Vanished.
And I had to start over again with another firm. And all the financial buildup that I had been able to do at that firm, was in the firm. So it was all lost. So I had to kind of start over from scratch again after, that had been about 14, 15 years into my career.
Wow. Well, quite a pivot. I think that it's remarkable. I think 9 out of 10 people, even most of the way through their career, would say, hey, I've got to look out for my family. This has happened. Everyone, good luck. Let me know if I can help. And take the great job and the great pay. It's remarkable that you wanted to keep all of the people, all the team, all the functions, as many as possible, the professionals at least, and then the lease in the same spot so that you could keep going and helping clients as you had mostly in the past. That's remarkable.
Well, I won't go so far as to say it's remarkable, but I will say that
it's unusual.
It's something that each of us, I think, needs to look into our core and say, when all else around us is going crazy, what am I going to hold on to? What are the values that I have developed or that I aspire to? And I'm going to make sure I don't deviate from those values. And it leads to this idea that maybe we'll talk about later, but if someone is going to hire you to do an important project, an important work, the only reason they're going to hire you is because they believe you're credible and you're competent. I call it the 2 C's. You have to be credible and you have to be competent. If you're just credible, you might be the most honest, you're always there kind of a guy, you're nice, you're fun, but you can't do the job. You're not competent. People won't hire you. They'll say, great guy, great gal, but don't bring them in for an important piece of work because they won't be able to get it done. And vice versa, if you're the most competent, you could get through any issue, deal with any problem the very best way, but you're not credible, you're not ethical, you're not honest, you're not dependable. People are going to leave you because you've got to have that combination. That's what they're buying, is someone that will deliver every time, and they're going to deliver a first-class product.
Great, it's great. Well, okay, so you're there. You guys get to stay together. You're part of KPMG, another huge, enormous household name, and you're a team still. So what then?
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful as we get over there that things are going to go really well. Every one of the Andersen clients that we had followed us. They all came to KPMG. They all could have gone somewhere else, but they all came, which was awesome.
So now they could switch completely,
Yeah.
or they could go back to the same team they've always had, just with a different name.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
So they came, and it was great. We were the firm was making great money. We were delivering good service, until, in my situation, until about 2 years in. And then we had a couple of situations. It wasn't anything the fault of the local KPMG management team or anything. But in an audit, you have to go through all the work and issue an opinion. And then you have to have another partner that's located somewhere else in the world review that and do what we call a concurring partner review, meaning, do they agree that you did the audit the right way? Mm-hmm. And so we sent this out to a concurring partner. And that concurring partner came back to us and said, and this was well in advance, 2-3 months in advance, came back to us at the last minute and said, I'm just too busy, I can't get it done. Mm. And I said, we can't miss this company's deadline. We can't. They're depending on us. Well, you just have to tell them that we'll just do the best we can, Mm. And we missed that deadline. Mm. That's never happened to me. That's not what I'm about. I talked to our management team across the country, the leadership, and I said, this can't happen again. And I received some assurances it wouldn't. 8 months later, another situation, same result. Different company, different client, same result. And I said, I can't do that. That's not me. That's not what I'm about. So I tendered my resignation, and in those days with these larger firms, you had to give 6 months notice, which I did. So as that 6 months was winding down, I have nowhere to go. Okay, I've got a family. I got 4 kids now, right? And I got nowhere to go. And now I was fortunate that I had 2 of the other competitors in our market hear about my fact I was leaving and call me and say, would you come here? They were big firms. Salary would have been great, everything's good. But as I'm meeting with their people around the country and making the decision, which way am I gonna go? Am I gonna go to this one or this one? I'm getting this feeling like, no, this isn't gonna work for me. It's not right, I'm not feeling comfortable. These firms have great reputations, but am I going into another bureaucracy that I'm not gonna be able to control in a way to make sure I'm delivering the kind of service I want to deliver? I get down to literally a month before I'm out of a job. A small firm here in Salt Lake City by the name of Tanner gives me a call, says, hey Kent, we heard you're leaving KPMG. Do you want to come over here and talk to us? And I said, I'm honored, I'm flattered, but I've been in the big firms. I think I'd come in and destroy your culture,
So how many people were at Tanner LLC accounting firm?
We had under 30. So it had a good reputation, but it was under 30 people. We're at KPMG, we were 180, right? Just in Salt Lake City.
And a worldwide organization.
And a worldwide organization of thousands around that, right? So I said, thank you, but I just don't think it'll work. I got down to 2 weeks before, and it hit me, why don't you call Tanner back and at least go look at it? And I did. And I looked at it, and I had this feeling, or this revelation, I'll use that term, that they're a great firm, but with a tweak here and there, it could be incredible. So I went back and I said, hey, if you still want this, I'm in. And it was really odd because nobody went to small firms from big firms in those days, right? And probably still don't very often. But we did it, and we talked, and we were able to create an atmosphere that allowed our people to buy into where they were all headed. And I'll fast forward to the end of the story. Tanner is now just under 300 people, and we're the largest in the state of Utah.
And another benefit I think that I've noticed having some experience with them is that there are a few people that have to travel all over the place all the time, but you get to work pretty close to the West and your home and be near Deborah and Heather and the kids, and It's a great benefit. But you weren't someone that wanted it to be 30 forever.
No, I didn't.
And it wasn't culture alone that was going to do it.
No.
So what were you thinking? What was the plan?
Well, here's what I was thinking, and I hopefully assume my partners were thinking the same thing. But I thought, look, we have this unique opportunity that I'm coming from a Big Four background, Big 5 to 4 when Andersen went away, so Big Four background. And if we could go find high quality, 4 or 5 high quality people from the other Big Four that wanted a different atmosphere and a different approach and bring them over, and then let our existing Tanner people know that there was going to be these 5 aspects of their professional life that were going to be put into play for them, and they could have everything they wanted. I thought we could take this and market it as a Big Four experience with capability and resources, and a local firm delivery with timely responsiveness, accuracy, and hand-holding wherever needed. We could make something special. And that's what we embarked on. So what we first had to sell our people, right? And so what we told them, and we had reasons to support this that they bought into, is that they were going to have a career that allowed them to have the best work-life balance in the industry, meaning they would have time to be a whole person. They could spend time with their families and have challenging work, and it would all be to their benefit. Second thing, they would have the best tools and training. We committed up front, we're going to spend more money on training you to be the best you could be, and we're going to give you the best software, the best hardware, the best approaches to audit that the other firms can't deliver because they have proprietary stuff. We can pick and choose the best of all the things. So they were going to get that. Third thing was we told them they were going to have the best client base. So in Utah, we were going to get the biggest construction companies, the biggest transportation companies, the biggest tech companies, you name it. They were going to be in our client base, and these other Big Four weren't going to be able to touch that at the same level. They might nationally, but not in Utah. Okay.
Let me ask you about that quick. So it's interesting because Salt Lake has such a work-life balance for so many companies that we don't have a bunch of Fortune 500 running around or headquartered here. We think we have 1 or 2 ever. And so it seems like it's a good opportunity because if you're one of the Fortune 500, maybe you have to go with KPMG, even though apparently they may miss their dates or something. But if you are a large company that's not quite a Fortune 500, you can go to the best firm. You can go to one that's going to do all those things you said. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and we are fortunate that we do have 30 to 40 really pretty good sized public companies here.
Big.
And so as a staff person working at a public accounting firm, you get a much better experience if you work on a $100 million company than you do a $1 billion company, because you get to see all aspects of their business. If you're working on a $1 billion company, maybe you only get to look at cash, or you get to look at this aspect, maybe inventory. But on 100 million or so, you get to look at stock options and cash and receivables and payables and equities and all aspects of revenues and expenses.
More of the actual operations, the activities of humans moving feet and hands and mouths there, because they're somewhat contained more in a geographic area. At least even with remote and satellite locations, they're all pretty close.
Yeah.
As opposed to the global behemoth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing we promised them was we were going to have a go-to-market strategy that said, if you're an auditor, you're just not going to be out there with an audit firm. If you're a tax guy, you're just not going to be out there with a tax firm. We're going to have a tax practice, second to none. We're going to have an audit practice, second to none. We're going to have a consulting practice, second to none. We're going to do litigation services, so you learn how to work with attorneys and help them build their cases, so that our people knew, oh, okay, so if I'm an auditor, I can still go out and I can probably win this work because I can say, we also do tax, or we also do consulting, or we also do litigation services. And that allowed them to be, they could sell easier to their prospective clients, and it was great. So all these employees said, we love it, okay? That's what we're gonna do, that's what we're gonna be. We had the lowest turnover of any firm in that initial 10 years, still do. And people knew they could progress up to the partner level and have a chance at being there at probabilities dramatically higher than being in a international firm.
Yeah.
So that was the first step, and we got that vision, and people understood it, and we reinforced it over and over again. And the one thing I didn't mention was I said, we also told them is they would have the best pay. They would have pay better than the Big Four if they bought into this, which has proven to be the case.
Wow, that's terrific. I think there's another huge aspect that I want to cover. It's maybe the most important one of the areas that I wanted to do this interview for, and that is that most people that are in operational jobs take sales for granted. They just think customers show up and we help them. And there's an enormously difficult challenge to start a new relationship with the right person, to have that very first conversation go well enough that there's a second, and then to be able to paint a picture and discover the needs and connect it to that they actually want to do business with you. Then you have to contract to do the business and agree, or at least agree how the business will go. And all of these very challenging, slalom posts, if you will, come far before anyone in operations meets anyone else to serve. And so you're coming into this small firm, you want to provide all these livelihoods, and the second part of that, I think that most people don't know, is that in these professional firms, you can remain a staffer, or you can bring business in over a long period of time and become an equity partner, or in some firms a partner of some sort, where your profit sharing is bigger, at least if you don't own anything. And so the people that can both do the super technical work of whatever it is, whether it's attorneys or accountants like yourself or CPAs, etc., the ones that can actually start, develop, discover needs, continue the relationship to describe how to fulfill them and do all those things I just said, they get a chance to have a much bigger opportunity and be part of a much bigger team in the partnership realm. And so you go to this little firm, it's got less than 30 people, and certainly that was probably stewing around in your mind. What happens growth-wise? What happens to me in my future career? Is that fair to say?
Very fair.
Thank you for joining us for the first half of this interview. Now go to markspencercook.com/podcast or your favorite podcast provider or YouTube to see the second half of this great interview.